Welcome back to the Kelowna Real Estate Podcast. I'm your mortgage broker host, Taylor Atkinson.
And I'm your real estate agent host, Matt Glenn. What's happening today, Taylor?
Another beautiful day in the Okanagan. What's going on with you?
Okay, I've been thinking a lot about what's happened in our BC, because you've all heard by now that the BC United Party has dropped out.
Yeah.
So I have just been thinking about this. I think what Kevin Falcon has done to that party is crazy. I wrote down a bit of a time frame of how this all went down. Okay, so I'm just going to read over this just so we can see how historically bad his leadership has been of that party. All right, so in 2017, there was an election. The NDP won only because they teamed up with Green's 3 seats to get over the Liberals, right? The NDP and Liberals were basically tied in 2017. 2020, there was an election, which was right in the center of COVID. NDP ended up with 57 seats, the Liberals with 28. The Conservatives, in both of those elections, 0 seats. Basically, a non-existent fringe party.
Yeah.
The way that elections work in BC is BC Liberals are basically the Conservative Party for BC. They're the center-right party. Like, they're on the right of center, right? So after the last election in 2020, when the Liberals lost 28 to 57 from the NDP, Andrew Wilkinson resigned as leader and Kevin Falcon became the leader in May 16th, 2022. That's like just over 2 years ago. They changed the name a year later, April 12th, 2023, to the BCUP Party, BC United, the B Cup Party, probably like the worst name change in history besides Twitter turning to X.
I actually don't mind the name. It's just a bad timing and bad marketing on
What, the BC United Party?
Yeah, I don't mind the name. It's just everyone was confused on.
Well, you don't have to get used to it because it's over now. Literally not even a party anymore. So they changed the name and dropped like horribly in the polls, go way down, just continuously over the last year. So bad that a couple of weeks ago, Kevin Falcon comes out and throws a Hail Mary out and says, listen, I'm going to scrap the income tax on the first 50,000 for everybody. Like, what on earth? Like, you're a party that is polling in like the single digits and you come out and say something crazy like that. Last week, comes out, pulls his party. So, like, you think if you're a leader doing this badly, what you would do is you'd fall on your sword and you'd resign? Not this guy. Pulls his entire party, totally throws all of his candidates, all the BC United candidates under the bus, still is in power. So now they can't even use like the BC Liberal name because they still own that. Now they all have to run independence. They can't run their own party because he is still the leader that is just driving this party into the ocean. All this in 1 year, and there has never been an election. He has basically resurrected the Conservative Party. Nobody in BC has actually voted for anything. We had basically 2 parties in BC, and now one of them is in the garbage when there was not even a vote for him at all. It's insane. And then now we're running into the election where we have the right of center vote is for the Conservatives. I think the BC United Party is going to have about 10 of their candidates running in this election out of 57 seats or whatever. I don't know how many seats there are, but only about 10 of them are going to get in. And the rest are either going to not run at all or they're going to run it as independents. So basically, since the Conservatives are not really they were a fringe party like a year ago or 2 years ago, the most, they don't have the party apparatus. Like, they don't have like the gears that run a political party. So they haven't vetted all of the people. Like, when we had Loyal Woodrich on this podcast, like, we had to get vetted to come on by the NDP, right? Like, you have the machinery behind these parties that vets people. Because Conservatives haven't been, we don't have that. So we have a lot of these candidates for the Conservatives that are honestly a little bit crazy. And you have all these awesome candidates like Steve Johnson, who's coming on to our podcast next week on the Liberals, who is like a solid 2-term city councilor, clearly meant to be in politics, doing the right thing, voice for the people, completely thrown under the bus. As of today, like, I think it's like 10 days after they forfeited the election, Steve has still not got a call. I just find it absolutely crazy. And like, think about, we have the NDP, which is a strong party on the left, and now on the right, you basically have the choice to vote for a party that is running non-vetted candidates, who's a little bit crazy. Like, just yesterday, Rustad was on Jordan Peterson's podcast saying that climate change is just not a real thing. And this is the only other choice you have besides the NDP now. Not only have you thrown your own candidates under the bus and ruined your own party in like an amazingly short amount of time, but you basically thrown everybody else under the bus too, because like we don't really have a viable choice. You know?
Yeah.
I think it's insane.
I love the rant. I do. I think it was potentially the right decision to not have a minority NDP. They were splitting votes, but
They're
incredibly
splitting votes. I
poor
agree.
timing, and to do what he did to the MLA nominations, like Steve Johnson,
Yeah.
brutal. Absolutely brutal. Poor communication and poor planning and poor execution. But yeah, like you said, we're bringing Steve on next week to, yeah, speak to
Yeah.
him about
We're
it.
gonna get his 2 cents on
And we're not
this.
putting words in anyone's mouths here in terms of that. But yeah,
No, this is my opinion.
yeah,
I can't believe that this has happened, honestly. And like, you got to think of this. Nobody has voted. So all this happened according to polls, which Kevin Falcon has been saying on the news. Who cares about polls? That's basically the only thing he said in the last year is who cares about polls? Well, apparently this guy cares about
yeah.
polls.
I've always been fascinated by that as well, because we're just like, oh, who's polling better? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nobody's ever asked me,
yeah.
right?
Nobody's asked, but we're telling you anyways.
Exactly. Well, I mean, like with the polls, right? Like, come on, man, let us vote.
Yeah.
So now I think he did everybody a disservice. It's one thing to resign and fall on your sword, but like he didn't resign and basically forced everybody else to,
Yeah.
right? It's like killing your family to save your family. Like, what is that? What is that? Like I had to get that off my chest because my God.
Okay.
So, but now we have an election in October. We'll see how that works out.
Yeah. Well, moving on to something a little more positive. Bank of Canada announcement came out. We saw a quarter point cut. So not as aggressive
Yeah.
as we would
All
like.
this being said, after all my rant, my prediction was way off. I thought it was going to be for sure a half a point decrease or maybe even a 3/4, and it was just a regular quarter point decrease, which still happy about, but I was way off.
Yeah, I think we could have used more, but at least we'll see more. Bit of positivity out of it is the fact that, like, it's not all wasted what we just went through. Like, at least they're not giving 1 point cuts and then we're going to be in inflation again and it's all this volatility. So
Honestly,
yeah.
good point.
But there was a financial post. I'll go over it quick. Pretty interesting, I thought. Household spending per person has dropped 1.3% in the second quarter. That's been one of the lowest we've seen in recent years, basically since the last recession. Yeah, so I'm looking at a chart. There are some candlesticks here that spending went up massively during COVID. Obviously, we know that. That's probably partially due to interest rate cuts and inflation.
And nothing else to do besides online shop.
Yeah, yeah. However, we've seen a pretty substantial decrease in spending. It doesn't mean that people don't have money to spend, actually. They said households saved 7.2% of their disposable income in the second quarter. It's the most since 1996. So I thought it was pretty interesting that, yeah, we're in like a pretty bad economic state. Like, we are in a recession, a quiet recession, mostly due to population growth was kind of hiding that. But yeah, apparently people still have some savings. So that's a good sign. Let's hope these rate decreases continue. In terms of investing, if you have some extra savings, we brought on Stephen Jagger.
And you don't need much.
No,
Yeah.
we brought on Stephen Jagger from Addy. I feel most people have heard about this, but maybe they haven't. I've been following them for years now. Really, really cool guy, like serial entrepreneur. He's been in this kind of tech business for the last 20 years. Him and his co-founder started Addy 7 years ago. So in 2018, essentially what it is it was a little as $1. You can invest in real estate.
Yeah, you basically can invest with smaller amounts of money into real estate investing.
Yeah.
Through other people.
So they facilitate the platform. They don't like essentially bring in or vet the deals, but they facilitate a platform that brings in investors and brings in people that need the capital. So it's a quasi syndication.
But you can vet your own deal. So you can go on there and you can pick which deal areas you want to invest in or what they're offering.
Yeah.
And you can offer as little as $1, he said, or as much as you wanted. What he's built there is such an awesome app. Like, it is
It
a
is so cool.
great opportunity.
And the fact that
Yeah.
like you can do as little as $1, I don't think most people understand like how difficult it would be to do that, because legal documents that people need to sign and facilitate, like the cost of the expense that they have to bring on an investor for $1 is going to be
Yeah.
outrageously high. So they've had to build all these systems to basically reduce their costs. So yeah, the software alone is fantastic. But yeah, and he's going to be up here next week for the Kelowna infill housing synopsis, which is Tuesday, September 10th. So tonight when this gets released. So if you're going to that, introduce yourself and touch base with him. But we'll get to the show because it's a good one.
It is an awesome one. We were looking forward to this one too a long time, so did not disappoint. Very good.
Yeah.
This episode, like every episode, is sponsored by Century 21 Assurance Realty, the best brokerage in the Okanagan. It's where I cut my teeth. I love being here. I'm actually in my office right now. It is the place to be if you want to build your career, you want to work in real estate where you're not all by yourself, you're kind of working in a team, but you're still doing your own business. It's the place to be. If you're an agent looking for a brokerage to switch into, or you're a buyer or a seller looking for an agent, call Century 21 Assurance Realty. We can help you out for sure.
Right on. Enjoy the show, guys. Okay, welcome to the Kelowna Real Estate Podcast. Steve Jagger from Addy. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing awesome.
Good.
Yeah, I've been reaching out to you for a little while now. Really excited to have you on. Matt and I both kind of know your business model, but how we like to start our show, just connect with our listeners, kind of what does your perfect Friday look like in terms of work, productivity? What gives you energy leading into the weekend?
I enjoy walking to work. I've got the luxury of that. So on nice days, I like to walk. I actually listen to your podcast, other podcasts. I find it good use of time walking for about half hour, 45 minutes to start the day. I'm usually early. I'm up relatively early most days. And yeah, and as far as productivity, generally, as long as we've got everything organized, and by the time Friday rolls around, hopefully we've got all the things we wanted to achieve by the end of the week mostly wrapped up and ready to rock so that we can step into the weekend. Yeah, for me, weekends is about hanging out with my family as much as I can. Kids are in sports, doing the sports thing, and
Nice.
maybe getting over to the cabin as we can find the time.
That sounds wonderful.
What is Addy? What's the business model for our listener that doesn't know?
Yeah, so Addy is a investment platform that enables regular Canadians to be able to participate in ownership society. So we're a tech company that has eliminated barriers to entry so that people can participate in what usually is a very restrictive or high barrier to entry business of making and participating in investments in institutional commercial grade real estate. Either you need to have a lot of money, and even if you do have a lot of money, you need to know of the opportunities, and our platform kind of eliminates both of those needs so that opportunities can come available, and the need for high investment minimums is not required. You can invest literally as little as $1 on the platform.
How did your career start to lead you to here? Like, were you an agent or an investor? Like, how did you get to Addy?
No, so my business partner is a guy named Mike Stevenson. He and I have been business partners now for 24 years. Since 2000, we've been working together on a handful of different companies that we've started and sold some of them. One of them you guys might remember was a company called Ubertor. We did residential realtor websites. So we started that company in 2003. We sold it in 2013. Still today, if you look up the site, the company we sold it to still operates. It's still a going concern for residential realtor CMS platforms. But how we got to Addy was Mike and I have been doing this stuff together, had some success. We've always been personally buying real estate. So for myself, with my wife and family, like doing our thing, he's been doing his thing with his family. And as kind of life progressed, we started deciding that maybe we could look into becoming limited partner, like investing as LPs behind some of these real estate developers in town, and where we could participate in a development opportunity. And so one of those opportunities came Mike's way in, 2017, maybe. The whole thing looked good. Mike was interested in it. The math made sense. The opportunity made sense. The risk made sense. But the problem was the developer wanted a minimum of a $1 million check. And so Mike had asked him, like, hey, I like the deal. I like what's going on here. But basically, can I have set up a syndicate? Can I incorporate an entity and have a handful of friends put money into the entity, and the entity will invest and be your investor? And this developer said, sure, like, yeah, you can do that, but I don't want to talk to any of your buddies. Like, I just deal with you. I want one investor, one entity's name, and that's it. Like, I'm not trying to have a whole syndicate. And so Mike did that. He reached out to me and a few other people saying, hey, here's what I'm up to. Do you guys want to participate? I said, yes. A few other guys said, yes. That's what happened. And while the developer had the minimum $1 million check requirement, when Mike set up the syndicate, the way he structured it was minimum $50,000 investment. And one of our employees at the time heard about what was going on and wanted to participate. And he had $10,000, and he asked if he could participate as well. And then sort of the unfortunate answer for him was no, you can't. And he didn't really take that lying down. He kind of got upset about it. He's like, $10,000 is a lot of money. Like, what's the difference between $10,000 and $50,000? Like, it's still a lot of money. It's still an investment. The developer's still trying to raise their capital. Why can't I participate? And it was that kind of conversation that got us going down the path of, like, a lawyer needs to touch the paperwork, and the lawyer charges a fee. And if it's a $100,000 investment or a $50,000 investment, the lawyer is the lawyer. It's the same price to have them do stuff. When you wire money, there's a cost for the wire to be sent as well as to be received. Setting up tax slips, T5 slips, T5013s, those need to be done every year. So, the developers want the least number of investors possible because there's a bunch of admin requirements that go around having investors. And so it's like these barriers after barrier after barrier of why this individual couldn't invest his $10,000. And kind of the outcome of that whole conversation was like, maybe he's right. Maybe these barriers are silly these days. And there's a way for us, like, we're good at building technology. Maybe there's a way for us to build a technology platform that eliminates those barriers so that anybody, regular people, regular Canadians, could participate in this asset class that is, like I said, generally quite restrictive. And so that's what we set out to do. We went and bought a single family house on the east side of Vancouver in late 2018, and we put it on what the sort of early version of what is Addy today, with the goal of trying to understand, do regular Canadians want to do this type of investing in smaller dollar amounts into a specific property or a specific address? It was like the proof of concept, just to figure out, like, are we nuts, or is this a thing that people might be interested in? And obviously, long story short, it was a thing. People were interested. 300 or so investors chose to participate in that Trout Lake property. And that kind of set us on the path of like, all right, maybe we're onto something. Maybe there is an opportunity here to keep building out the technology and automating and eliminating all the barriers to entry that you can imagine. We had to build the tech to get rid of all of it. And it's like, it goes on what it is, right? Enabling an investor to create an account, connect a bank account, move money back and forth, sign a subscription agreement. The subscription agreement's got to be auto-generated. If you live in Alberta, it's a different agreement than it is in BC. If you're retail eligible or accredited investors, different agreements. All the T5 slips or T5013s, doing the dividends and distributions back out to thousands of investors, like all of that stuff had to be built into the software to make this thing a viable platform for people to use.
I think you touched on a good point previously too. It was like, how do you then communicate to clients? Like, yeah, how do you communicate to clients on specific investments? Like, if I want to know what my portfolio is looking like, who do I talk to? Or do you send out a newsletter? Like, obviously people kind of want to know where things are at and how things are performing. How do you address that?
Yeah, so we're not the ones buying any of the properties or running them, with the exception of the very first Trout Lake property. They're all owned and operated by third parties that are using the Addy platform to raise capital. And part of what they can use the software for is to do investor updates. So they can go into the system and, type in an update, load a PDF, load a video, load photos, load whatever. And our software syndicates it to all of the investors. If there's 50 or 5,000, it doesn't matter. That's how investors keep up to speed with what's going on. So when you log into your Addy account, you'll see your portfolio. In your portfolio, you'll see all the different opportunities that you've chosen to participate in. Within each of those opportunities, you will see updates from the different issuers, right? And some of them are pretty basic. Like, there's a Starbucks in Chilliwack that's on the platform. It was a brand new building built for Starbucks Canada. It's done 14 quarters of consistent dividends, but it's a new building. It has a drive-through. It has a great tenant. It just kind of does what it does. There's not a lot of updates, except like the building's still reasonably new. The tenant is still paying the bills. Everything is kind of working. And so the updates are much simpler around the financials of that quarter, where if it is a development where they haven't dug the hole yet or got permits yet, or they are digging the hole and they've run into some challenges, or it's an asset that needs a whole bunch of work and there's a huge renovation program going on, like those ones also need to do updates, and they can be much more robust, again, depending on the type of opportunity that people have chosen to participate in. But that's how it works, is you log into your account and you can keep up to speed with what's going on. And then we've also got a Discord server set up, and each property has its own channel. So there's thousands of our community that are in the Discord, and they're all chatting with each other about the different opportunities. Many of the issuers are in there chatting with them. Temp market dealers are in there. So it's pretty neat.
How many properties do you guys have in your portfolio then, I guess, or access to investors?
Yeah, 44 properties have come on the platform thus far. All have been equity deals. The 45th is about to launch. It'll be the first, what we call Addy Credit. It'll be the first debt side where people can invest. In this case, it's going to be a first mortgage, where people are going to be able to participate in the credit side of real estate. So 44, number 45 is coming. And you can see them all when you log into your Addy account. Everybody can see all the different opportunities. There's been 3 hotels in Quebec. There's multifamily buildings across the country. There's a 11 building business park in Calgary. There's that Starbucks in Chilliwack. There's developments all over the place.
So people can just like dollar cost average, right? They could, spend $500 on one property, $1,000 on the next. Like, they can pick and choose what they want to invest in, and you guys have a general pro forma of, we're looking for an 8% return or a 10, like what would encourage people to invest in certain properties than others?
Yeah, so it's up to each individual investor, right? We're the software and the platform that facilitates making it possible for all of this to happen. When an investor comes on the platform, they've got their own ideas as to what they're interested in. Like some of them might be from Vancouver, but don't like Vancouver. Or others are from Vancouver, but priced out of Vancouver and like the idea of investing in opportunities in Vancouver. Lots of people are like pro Alberta, right? They're interested in multifamily buildings in Alberta and they wouldn't do a multifamily building in Ontario or BC due to rent control concerns, or some like certain developers and will invest in a developer into their development wherever it might be, but they like the developer themselves. So it really depends on who you are, what your risk tolerance is, what you're interested in. Are you interested in cash flow? Are you interested in higher risk like development opportunities? It depends. Everybody can choose their own way that they want to go. And then like the platform enables you to invest as little as $1. And it's not meant to be like a marketing shtick. Like imagine you had $400 and we said the minimum was $500. All of a sudden, Addy itself is the barrier to entry. And so the point of the $1 is just, if you've got $400, you can decide. You can put $400 into one opportunity. You could put $50 into a bunch. You could do 100 in one, skip this one, do 50 in the next. Like it's totally choose your own adventure. Make a decision that's prudent for you. And there's no minimum that you're pushing yourself to try and get to. You can decide if $5,000 is good for you or $5 is good for you.
So as a developer, like how would a developer get on Addy to start raising money? Like, are they vetted or is there any kind of situation like that?
Matt's asking for a friend. He wants to fundraise some money.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, it's super common. There's kind of two sides to the system. There's what we call a public issuance and a private issuance. A public issuance is something that you're choosing as the issuer to make available to the Addy community, where you know what you're getting into. You're planning on having or knowing you're going to have 1,000 or 2,000 investors participate in your opportunity. A private issuance is where you're looking to use the Addy software, but you are only going to make it available to your 10 or 20 investors that your friends, your family, your father-in-law, your sister, whoever. You've already got your people. You're just looking to use the software to make your life a little bit easier as far as running
Oh
the
yeah,
cap
interesting.
table, running investor updates, running movement of money, that kind of stuff. So there's kind of two sides that an issuer will choose. If they are going down the public issuance side, there is a whole bunch of information that they supply that they put into the platform around the due diligence, the pro forma, the building condition reports, the environmental documents, you name it. And again, depending on the type of opportunity, if it's a development or if it's just a straight up cash flowing asset, like there's a bunch of information and documentation that gets shared in there that investors can see. And then we do some work to make it easier for the investor community to make decisions. So we pull title on the property and put the title into the account so people can see it. We do court searches on the issuer to figure out have they been sued before, what's gone on in their past, like track record, that kind of stuff. And the goal is just to put it into the platform to enable people to be able to make an investment decision. But those are kind of the two ways that people can go, public issuance or private issuance. And definitely not all public issuances make it onto the platform. There's a bunch of things and due diligence that needs to be done to hit a certain level that we're comfortable with of making it available to the community. And then the community does make their own decisions. The exempt market dealer that's involved in the transaction also makes sure that the investment is suitable for each of the investors.
Is Addy like registered on title? Like, are you guys in a position? I'm assuming there's a first position lender, like a mortgage for most of these. And then you guys are the capital that has essentially the down payment and closing costs and everything, or however the developer wants to use it. But do you have any security on the property?
It depends on how they structure it. Most times, like investors are not on title. Most structures are either you're in a GPLP, a general partner, limited partner. If you're on the investor side, you're coming in as an LP, which is a limited partner, which means it's limited. The developer is the general partner. They are usually the ones guaranteeing the mortgage, taking on all the risk. There's a lot more that they take on, and that's why they are the GP, versus the LP is limited in what their risk is. So the LPs are never usually listed on title. Lots of times these opportunities or these properties are sitting in bare trusts or they're sitting in corporations. Like a lot of times even the GPs aren't listed on title. It depends on the legal structure, but every opportunity that comes out of the Addy platform, you will see the legal structure of it. And it's a diagram of here's how this works. Here's how your money's coming in. Here's the title. Here's the mortgage. And so people can see and understand how the structure of the deal is situated. But usually, there's kind of two choices. You're investing, you're buying shares of a corporation that has, beneficial ownership of the property, or you are an LP and you've bought into a limited partnership unit, and that's how you're owning that piece or that slice of the property.
Right. Are you ever thinking about going public with this, or what's the long-term play for you? Like, I know off air you said you had about 50,000 people on your platform. What's the 10-year game plan for you?
We would like to grow and continue growing to enable as many Canadians as possible to be able to participate in sort of ownership society of this institutional commercial grade real estate. We have ambitions of having millions of Canadians on the platform for sure. As far as going public or not, like that's a path for sure of building a sizable company. There is an end result of potentially going public, especially if you've taken outside capital, that we have investors in the company itself. And so usually to give them liquidity at some point would be an IPO. But we're still, a long way from that. We're still continuing to scale the business, bringing on more issuers on the platform and more Canadians onto the platform to participate.
So what are you guys looking for most right now? Are you looking for more kind of developers or more investors, or what are you in need of right now?
Growing both sides. In our case, we're a double-sided marketplace. So you can't do much with one without the other. You need the opportunities and you need the investors who choose to participate in those opportunities. You can't have too much or too little of one or the other. So it's always a matter of pushing both forward. We've got a pretty good pipeline of issuers that are coming onto the platform. The neat thing about the issuers is we're finding that real estate operators or real estate developers are using the addy software not because they're looking for capital necessarily. Lots of them are coming onto the platform because they're looking for a way to enable their employees to participate in the buildings that they're building or that they're operating, that they're maintaining, or whatever it is. The operator is just trying to figure out, like, how do I enable the person on the tools to have a slice of ownership? How do I enable my accounting team, my office staff to be able to participate? And lots of the developers haven't been able to figure out a way that's cost effective, right? They're able to do it if you're letting your executive staff, but they're putting in minimum $25,000 checks. But some employee that wants to put in $1,000 or $2,000, the operators, that's a big reason why they're coming to us. They see the software as like a ESOP program, it's like an employee stock option program. So they see as like, well, that's just neat. I could use this addy platform, make the opportunity available to my team, my trades, the realtor that did the deal with me, the mortgage broker that did the deal with me. Like, all of these people are able to participate in the ownership of that building. And by doing that, obviously the default is if they choose to make it available to their smaller public community, it could be available to all Canadians. There's lots of reasons why operators are coming to us. That's like an example of one. Another great one is we've got this hotel group out of Toronto that buys small hotels in Quebec. And their kind of concept is like, why wouldn't I want 2,000 shareholders of a hotel? Like, if you're ever going to go to Montreal, you're probably going to stay in your hotel, right?
Yep.
If your friends and family are going to Montreal, you say, hey, you should go stay in my hotel. And so the guy sees it as like word of mouth of helping the commercial aspect of the business. We see it with our Starbucks in Chilliwack. People drive by 5-6 other Starbucks to go to their Starbucks, right? They send us selfies from the drive-through all the time of people like, hey, I'm in the drive-through. I'm telling my kid that I own part of this building.
That's very cool.
So we've got a lot of those types of opportunities or issuers that are wanting to come onto the platform, utilize the software, make their lives easier for how they do a lot of the basics within their business. But those basics are usually quite manually done for them. And so they're able to use that automation and use the tools that we've built that makes this all work for thousands of investors.
So is there like an average amount that's raised, or like a max, like a high watermark or a low watermark? Like, how much can an investor expect to raise from addy for a project?
Depends on the opportunity, depends on the time of year, depends on how many other opportunities on the platform. But generally, we've seen issuers raise anywhere from $500,000. I think the biggest was 1.7 million, and all into like a specific property. So it's kind of in that range. As the community gets bigger, those amounts can get bigger. That's where it's been over the last 44 opportunities that have come onto the platform. And then the average investor is about $500-$600 per property. Right. So it's thousands of people choosing to participate to make that happen. Like, there was a development in Mission. That it's a 109-unit purpose-built rental building that was being built in Mission, BC. That one's being rented right now. I think 1.7 million went into that one over 3 tranches. The issuer broke down the issuance. It wasn't 1.7 million total. The first slice was $500,000 before they even dug the hole. And then they did another $500,000 when the parkade was built and it was starting to come out of the ground. And then they did a final $700,000 slice when the building was almost complete. There's lots of different ways that these opportunities can be structured depending on what the issuer is trying to do, what the challenges they're having. especially when it's a development. Like things change. That building was built through COVID. Obviously, it slowed it down. They ran into some underground stream that wasn't expected.
You're going to say they ran into some underground bats and released a
Yeah.
COVID pandemic.
No, definitely not. There's always these challenges with that's why they're potentially higher paying, but they're definitely higher risk.
Yeah.
Versus making an investment in like the Starbucks in Chilliwack, where it's a brand new building, already had the tenant, built for Starbucks. Like it's a different risk profile. But that's kind of the neat thing about the platform is people can pick and choose.
Have there been any projects that you guys have invested in that have defaulted then?
There's some projects that have had challenges, yes. The group out of Hamilton that had challenges when interest rates went up, they were not prepared for the amount that interest rates were going to go up. And they ran into a bunch of problems across a whole bunch of their portfolio. That definitely was not a good situation for the investor group that chose to participate in those opportunities. Across 44 properties, there's been a handful that have had challenges. All of the details for the opportunities that have come on the platform, people can see them. You just go to addyinvest.ca and you click on properties, you can see all of the opportunities that have come on. And then if you are an investor in them, you get all the property updates within the app. But people can join the Discord server and see there's a channel for each property and kind of see what's going on with each opportunity and what's been happening and how certain developments are going, how certain cities are going, how certain, provincial politician changes affect things, how, Alberta, no rent control versus BC, Ontario rent control. Like there's good and bad to all of these things. And so people are able to follow along and learn about all the different opportunity types as well as all the different environments these properties are in.
I guess it would depend on the type of investment, but is your investment locked in for the duration of the project, or is it liquid at all, or how does that work?
Generally, you're locked in. Like there is a mechanism to sell early. It's not widely used. Again, the average investor is $500, $600, $700 per property. And so all the estimated timelines and everything are that. They are estimates or projections, right? Our very first exit that happened in the building, people invested in the building called the Lex downtown Vancouver. It was projected to be a 5-year hold, and everybody was exited in 11 months at like a 22, almost 23% return. So it was way faster than expected, way higher of a return than expected. But the opposite can also be true. You could be in a 5-year projected timeline and end up being in at 7 or 8 because something happened. COVID happened, a flood in whatever city it was in. Like, things change over the timeline of an opportunity. And that's why when people are looking at opportunities, of course, none of this is investment advice, but part of it is like, where is the property? What type of property? What's the risk level of that property? What city is it in? What's the tax regime of that city and province? And then a big one, like, who's the operator, right? The operator is a really important piece of like, do they know what they're doing? Can they withstand problems and changes? How have they handled that in the past? What's their track record like? All of those things matter because some of those things can throw off a deal, in the way that not a good operator can maybe mess up a great property, but in the way that a great operator can really do wonderful things with a terrible property or, a property that's got a lot of challenges. Right. So there's a whole bunch of factors when you're looking at different opportunities to participate in.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's pretty valuable too to be able to invest a small amount, right? Like we kind of need to separate the software and the investment because otherwise you're left with investing, hundreds of thousands of dollars on one project that could as well have the downside. So, if you're averaging like 9 wins out of 10 investments, that's pretty good. I know you're obviously on the tech software side of the business, but as a real estate investor, and as the projects are coming up, where's kind of the insight? Like what markets do you like right now? Provincially, municipalities, like where are you kind of seeing opportunities in the near future?
Well, the good news is, maybe for you guys, is Kelowna.
Nice.
Good answer.
Definitely didn't put me up for this. I'm coming up to Kelowna in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be on this infill housing symposium that the city of Kelowna is putting on around missing middle. Kelowna is moving very fast on fast tracking development permits for single family houses that can turn into sixplex rental apartment buildings.
Yes.
And the Addy platform is a very big key to all of that. And it's not just Kelowna. Like we've got the city of Mission, Calgary, Edmonton, Regina, there's Barrie, there's cities across the country that are looking to do this type of stuff and fast track these smaller missing middle type rental developments with the changes that CMHC has made. There's lots of opportunity now to enable housing to get built quicker. And a big piece of what's missing is what Addy can do. It's like we can be the plumbing or sort of the pipes or the glue or whatever you want to call it underneath all of these aspects of enabling community capital to invest in these opportunities, because most of them need capital to make it work. But then they also need the infrastructure on how do you do dividends and distributions and the tax slips and all that kind of stuff that can not only enable like a citizen builder, someone who might already own the single family lot and is wanting to rip down their property and build a sixplex, but might need some community capital, but might need some support on like how to run their opportunity. We're deep in it, and Kelowna is kind of our first one that's moving relatively quickly. So like I said, I'll be up there in a couple of weeks for this City of Kelowna event where it's all about the missing middle and how do they kickstart a whole whack of these projects and utilize the community capital that's available through the addy community to support them.
I love what you guys are doing. You know, I heard about you years ago. It's such a great product. Like, do you not have any competition?
I was going to ask that. Like, is anybody else doing it?
Depends on what you look at as competition. There's competition from the like, you've got $1,000 to invest. What do you do with it? Like, oh, there's the stock market. There's this. There's
Right.
things from a competitive point of view from that point of view. As far as if you look at it from like, I want to invest specifically in real estate with that same $1,000 as a retail investor, not a lot of options out there for you. Like our platform is available for all Canadians in all provinces and territories, as long as you're over the age of majority. So it's like 19 in British Columbia, 18 in Alberta, and it bounces back and forth depending on the province or territory that you're in. But the software and the technology that enables all of this, and it is different for each province. Like each province has its own rule set. There's different requirements for each one, different paperwork that need, like if you're in Saskatchewan, you sign marginally different paper than someone in Alberta. Like it's just pieces of paper that are different. Our software can facilitate all of that in real time to thousands of transactions all at the same time. So someone in Saskatchewan who's 25 and someone in Alberta who's 56 and someone who's accredited in this place and someone who's a retail investor here can all get served up the exact correct paperwork for them in real time. And that really is what makes the platform very, very unique for what we do in Canada. We've also had our first American property come on the platform. So Canadians were able to invest US dollars into a US property. So they're not only now enabled to diversify across the country, we're starting to enable them to diversify out of the Canadian dollar into the US dollar and from the US dollar into American real estate. Like the first one was a student housing complex in Oklahoma. They were suggesting or projecting quarterly dividends, I believe. But again, that's like for a regular Canadian trying to invest in American real estate, it's a huge headache if you're going to do it yourself. You got to deal with the tax problem, you over border stuff. Like it's so much that most people are like, I'm not going to bother doing that. It's too much work. But using the addy platform, the way that the structure works, you can do that and diversify into different currency, different country.
Yeah, well, you said a word I love and Matt hates, but it's tax. It's interesting because you're probably like avoiding speculation tax, capital gains tax. Like if you're just paying a straight dividend in terms of an investment, it's not like people are going to get penalized on these flipping taxes that are now the barrier for a lot of investors to try and make money in real estate. You've provided a platform that, you know, is just a legitimate way around that and just pays a straight dividend. So there's probably more benefit to that now.
It depends. Like when an issuer does a dividend or a distribution through the software, they do have to choose, is this return of capital? Is this an interest payment if it's on the addy credit side? Is it business income? Like there's a handful of things, and depending on what they choose will dictate what is going to show up on your T5 slip that also comes out of the addy platform. So there can be different tax treatments depending on what's gone on with that specific issuance and how that issuer is structured to push capital back.
Yeah. I was just talking this morning about a lot of purpose-built rentals being done in Kelowna right now, commenting like how it's kind of favoring the institutional investor because you need to have large amount of capital basically to get these projects going, and not a lot of individuals have that. Kind of funny that it came up today that we're talking to you, that you can get into it this way, get into a project like that.
Yeah, a normal opportunity is like if you go and buy a $30 million building in Kelowna, some big multifamily thing, whatever it is, a few hundred units, it's $30 million. You might slap a $20 million mortgage on it, so there's $10 million of equity. Maybe you put in $2 or $3 million, and then you probably raised the other $7 million. And usually that's done by running around and finding 7 individuals that are willing and able to cut you $1 million checks. You have 7 investors, $1 million each. You've got your $3 million into the deal and then the mortgage. And that's kind of how you run it. You've got a small little group. You're the general partner. You've got 7 limited partners, and they get their quarterly or annual dividends every year. It's definitely a wealthy person's game because you need the capital to be able to do it. And it's funny, even with people that have the money, a lot of them don't have the access because they don't know the people that are buying the building. So they don't even have access to the deal flow. of what's even out there, what's the potential, what's available. But yeah, it's a big one. It's being able to take that 7 million and chop it into 7 million $1 increments is a game changer.
Yeah. It seems like you should be supported and promoted more by government at this point, because like, yeah, we're now across Canada, it seems like more of a renter's game, right? Like it's more difficult for local families to afford their own home, so they're kind of forced into renting, but this is just such a perfect platform for them to at least buy into the product that they want to be into. So yeah, kudos to you guys. Seems like good timing for you as well, like over the last 6 or 7 years, probably a good time to start this company. So obviously some ups and downs recently, but
Yeah, there's always ups and downs with building, I guess any business, but a technology startup for sure. And I think, yeah, we've been able to navigate the path thus far, not necessarily knowing the path. Like when you're building a platform like this, you don't necessarily know, oh, you do this, then we're going to do that, then we're going to do this. And like, here's what we're doing. A lot of it is just trying to understand and figure out what the challenges are, figure out where the roadblocks are, and figure out how do we make it better, faster, easier. And a great example would be at the beginning, we used to use DocuSign. You guys probably use it in your
Still use it.
DocuSign or HelloSign or whatever you're using. We used to use that at the beginning as well, but they charge what, $2, $3, $4, $5 per signature. That
yeah.
doesn't really work at scale if we are enabling thousands and thousands of people to be signing subscription agreements. So now if you guys create an account on the Addy platform and choose to invest in something and sign, you're signing using Addy Sign. We built our own signature technology to be able to do that because we had to eliminate that cost. And that's like one of 50 things or more than 50 things that we had to do. And we just kind of stack rank them in priority of like, well, day one, movement of money was a big thing of like, how do we deal with thousands of small dollar investors and moving money, and what can we do? We can't use a third party service provider that charges a percentage of the money move. That doesn't work, right? So we had to figure that out. Then we had to figure out signature technology. We had to figure out automatically creating subscription agreements in real time with your personal details on it, but all filled in it accurately and correctly per form if you live in Saskatchewan or BC, Alberta or whatever. Like, I could go on and on and on with all of these things that needed to be done.
What does your team look like? Because like as I'm hearing this, I'm thinking you guys are just dreamers that are executors. Like I would imagine you had a lot of pushback at the beginning from people. Say your legal department must have been like, "Are you kidding me? Like we can't do all this." Like was it just a couple of you starting, running uphill for a year until you finally got a bunch of other people on board, or what are you guys at right now? Like how many employees do you have?
There's 15 of us. We're a nice sort of small team. That's the neat thing about today. Our team is pretty bionic, right? With all of the AI and technology out there, a colleague or a teammate can be pretty bionic in that they can do a lot more than they used to be able to do 5 or 10 years ago. You can move a lot faster with a lot of these technologies that are out there. And so our team does a really good job utilizing them so that we can grow faster and as efficiently as possible. As far as like knowing what we were doing at the beginning, like my business partner, Mike's really good at being able to kind of see around corners. Like he's got a good mind for how can technology solve some challenge that we're in front of. Like he's just got a really good way of like, oh, like a normal person be like, oh, it's a problem. I guess we can't do that. He's just got a good way of thinking about it and throwing stuff up against the wall. Like, well, what if we did this? And what if we did that? And then if this happened, do we end up at the right result? And a lot of the times that's how we've solved stuff is we've solved stuff with technology, but just coming at it from a totally different angle than most people would, or most people be like, I guess we can't do it. This is the way it has to work. And we've had to
I love it.
question literally everything.
I feel like next time I have a problem, I'm just going to call you guys because it seems like you'd be able to solve anything. Like,
Thank God, another monkey off my back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get you guys running Canada. I feel like there's a ton
I
of
love this.
things
Like,
we
it's
could
kind of
tackle.
like using the technology. Like, I brought this up a little earlier, but like using it kind of a little outside the box is like if you're say like I would assume you could use it something if you're you're starting like a plumbing company where you could have like your plumbers invest in the company. It's like kind of like a profit sharing thing, and you just use your technology or your software to do that.
Yeah, like technically, yes. Like people are choosing to invest money into an asset. In this case, the asset is institutional commercial grade real estate.
Yeah,
You could technically swap that out and you could be buying LP units that owns a Picasso or something. Like, sure, in theory, yes, that's totally possible. But for us, no. Like, we'll stick with what we're doing, stay focused on institutional commercial grade real estate. Like I said, we've done equity. Now we're into the credit side. Lots more to do to make this platform available for more and getting more people on the platform, as well as continuing to expand the types of opportunities that come onto the platform.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, a lot of ways you can go. This is super exciting.
Okay, well, we're going to be conscious of your time and jump into some of our wrap-up questions, if that's all right. If you could buy one property in the Okanagan in the next 12 months, what would it be?
We are actively looking for a single family house that could be converted to a 6-unit rental. So there's
Nice.
a handful of opportunities. My business partner Mike was just up there 2 weeks ago. I'll have
Nice.
more information for you in the coming week or two.
Yeah, Matt and I are just both being quiet. Like, tell us the inside scoop. Where do we buy?
Steve, if you could give your 20-year-old self any piece of advice, what would it be?
20-year-old self, any piece of advice? Gosh, I feel like, investing sooner is obviously good if we're sticking on the theme of real estate. Thinking about investing opportunities and getting started earlier. I started, I think, relatively early. Thinking about it even sooner than I did, I think would be super helpful, especially now if you look at the run-up of Lower Mainland or even most of Canada's real estate over the last, I'm 46, so the last 26 years.
Yeah,
it's been pretty good.
I think that's solid advice for everybody. So,
what's your favorite charity, or how do you give back?
I sit on the board of something called the Zajac Ranch. It's a ranch for basically kids with disabilities or have pretty strict requirements around doctors and nurses that need to be with them and don't get to go camping. And so the Zajac Ranch is built for exactly that. So you can get a kid on a horse and do camp-like stuff, but they have all of the medical gear and staff to be able to make sure that that's possible for those kids that just can't get to a sort of a regular camp that doesn't have the same infrastructure to facilitate all of it. So it's a really good charity. People should look it up. It's zajacranch.com. It's pretty important.
That sounds great. Love that one. Haven't heard that before, obviously. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Started by Mel Zajac. And if you look up Mel Zajac, he built a lot of the west end of downtown Vancouver. He was an old school developer.
Oh, wow.
He's like 95 now, but he built a bunch of these towers and all this stuff. A lot of them are still there. But he's the founder of the Zajac Ranch. He's got a neat story.
That is very cool.
Oh, cool.
All right. How can Taylor or I or a listener help you?
Oh, well, more the merrier hopping on the Addy platform. You should go to addyinvest.ca, sign up, create an account, and start your journey on the platform. It's not only a great way to participate in the ownership of institutional commercial grade real estate, but I think there's a neat learning opportunity around it, around people just getting to learn about what's going on in different provinces, different cities, what different operators do, how hotels work, how multifamily works. Like there's just a lot of a great learning that comes out of it for people just to be able to participate and go for the ride of these different opportunities in different places and different buildings. So it's, the more the merrier. We're trying to add as many Canadians on the platform as possible.
All right. And that's addyinvest.ca.
Correct.
Nice.
I think that's one of the biggest value adds for me, actually, in these type of products or platforms is the education piece behind it. You get to really learn. So
it's huge. Like if you get into our Discord, when a property comes out on the platform, their community's in Discord, they'll go into that channel for that specific property and they're running their own pro formas. They're running their own numbers. They're questioning like, oh, what's rent going to be like in 4 years or what's this going to be? And they're all going back and forth chatting with each other about like, oh, I saw that this is happening or this development down the street's happening or SkyTrain's going here. And like, it's just super interesting. And sometimes someone lives there. So they'll drive by and take pictures of like, oh, here's what it looks like today. It's
that
really
awesome.
neat and it's very educational. Yeah, it's fun.
Well, we look forward to having you up here in a couple of weeks, and we'll definitely be following you along. So thank you so much for today's chat. Yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Steve.
Thanks for having me.